Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack, and after a week of Overwatch Classic being out, we can finally look at it and see if it was a success. But first, let me ask you, was Overwatch Classic everything that you hoped for? Of course not. It sucked. Okay, maybe saying that it sucks is a little bit extreme. The way that I would actually describe Overwatch Classic is a successful failure. And what I mean by that is that Overwatch Classic is not totally unfun, that's not what I'm saying, but it rather just showed everyone just how far Overwatch has improved over its 8 years, but more importantly, it broke everybody's rose-tinted glasses, saying that the only fun time of Overwatch was back in 2016, saying that the best time to play this game was when it first released. Well, Blizzard said, put your money where your mouth is. Literally, because we want you to buy skins. They reached deep in the files of their storage facility and brought back the original patch of Overwatch 1.0 and threw the slop on the table and said, here! This is what you wanted! And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited for the slop, along with the majority of the Overwatch community. But as soon as we took that first forkful of Overwatch Classic slop, it was like we were in the Ratatouille scene taking us all the way back to our childhood. Except with a lot more trauma. Blizzard really reminded us of just how bad the original vision of Overwatch was. I mean, Symmetra was borderline useless. D.Va was actually useless. Fat Res was still infuriating and unfun to go up against. And 2, CP. But that's not to say that there wasn't fun aspects of Overwatch Classic. I mean, Genji is finally usable after him not being usable for like 6 years or so. Playing with 6 Winstons was extremely fun and goofy for like the first match. But it was also just really cool to see the original build of heroes playable in Overwatch, whether they were really good like with Cassidy or really bad like with Roadhog. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, but as a main, it was super fun to be able to freeze the enemy and just see them scream internally, but no one could hear their screams, and then I just put an icicle right in their forehead. No, what were we talking about? The point that I'm trying to make here is that Overwatch Classic was a really fun limited time mode. It was just supposed to be a nostalgia trip and not really taken so serious as compared to something like OG Fortnite, which I think that's what a lot of people kind of expected Overwatch Classic to be, was sort of like a replacement for their fun, or maybe lack thereof, that they typically find in Overwatch 2's quick play mode, or less than likely, Overwatch 2's competitive mode. But why? Why wasn't Overwatch Classic as successful as OG Fortnite to the point where people are begging Blizzard to keep this as a permanent mainstay, begging them to possibly replace it with the current quick play version? Well, there's a lot of reasons that people will point to as to why Overwatch Classic really didn't succeed like they expected it to. The first that a lot of people will say is, well, they didn't use the right golden era of Overwatch. The first day wasn't the best time. It was actually when Ana was already in the game and Season 2 released, or when the GOATS era first launched, or with the Moth meta. And luckily, Overwatch Classic is going to be returning with all those different eras. It's like their Taylor Swift with their Eras tour of the past. Some people will say, oh, it's because they didn't actually include the other features that were fun, like the end of match cards or loot boxes. Or a lot of people bring the emotional side of Overwatch Classic, saying, well, this isn't 2016. This game isn't brand new, and we didn't really know better back in the time, which is why Overwatch 2016 was a lot of fun, because we didn't know what was good or what was bad. We just knew what we knew. And while all those are valid points, and while I'm kind of in the camp of the third point, I think the biggest reason as to why Overwatch Classic didn't really succeed to people's expectations is that Overwatch as a whole has been a big evolution over time, but keeping its foundation intact so that it's not a completely different video game as compared to something like OG Fortnite. Like, the best way I can compare Overwatch 2 to Overwatch Classic is think of them like iPhones. Overwatch 2 is the iPhone 16, while Overwatch Classic is the very first iPhone. A lot of people have nostalgia over the first iPhone and maybe even prefer that iPhone and like that iPhone a lot more than the current one. But when you use both in hand, the iPhone 16 blows the first one out of the water with its updated features, with its better camera, with its speed, just in every way, shape, or form, the iPhone 16 is better than the very first iPhone, with the exception of the Genji feature, because Genji is still better in the first iPhone. However, if you were to take a user of the first iPhone back in 2007 and give him an iPhone 16, yeah, he might have a little bit of trouble at the beginning, but he'd still be able to use it with relative ease because it still uses apps, it still has the camera app, it still can make phone calls, you still download apps, it still has the same foundation. Same thing with Overwatch 2. If you're to take a player from 2016 and throw him into Overwatch 2, yeah, he might be overwhelmed with the additional 20 plus heroes and new game modes like with Flashpoint and Clash and all the brand new maps. It can be very overwhelming in that aspect, but they can also find comfort in knowing that the first original heroes are still there. Mei is still here. Yeah, she doesn't have her freeze, but maybe they like that additional feature because they found the freeze to be very infuriating. And I think that's why Overwatch Classic wasn't this revolutionary game mode that brought all this nostalgia back, which it did in some way, but not in a way that people favored it over the modern day version of Overwatch. And it's because it's still kind of the same game, just worse. It's like going back to 2007 and using the first iPhone. It's just worse. Like, if I can just make one more comparison between Overwatch and Fortnite, think of Overwatch Classic as a steak and think of OG Fortnite as pizza. Both foods are good in their current bland state. But let's say you want to improve both dishes, and you can go two different routes. The first route with the steak, you can just keep it simple and simply add butter. But with the pizza, you're adding all sorts of different toppings. You're adding anchovies, pineapples, onions, pepperoni, piss, sausages, all different types of things that can really bog down the original vision of the game. I mean, pizza. That's kind of what Fortnite did over time, is that they just added so much to it that it became too complicated or too overwhelming to enjoy the pizza. I mean, the game. Whereas with the steak or Overwatch Classic, simply just adding butter evolved it very slightly, but you can still see the foundation, and it's just better. Now, obviously, people will say, oh, you don't think all the added heroes and game modes is overwhelming the game? And look, it was just a simple metaphor. The real point that I'm trying to make here is that the reason why OG Fortnite succeeded is because it went back to its simple bare bones state, simply just cheese, sauce, and bread, before all these complex weapons and AI and vehicles and places around the map that you gotta go to and Peter Griffin. Like, there are just so many things that just took it away from a simple, fun video game that people like me, casuals, can enjoy. And while I'm not trying to make this a video glazing OG Fortnite, I think it's just a good way to look at the two nostalgia cash grabs, because at the end of the day, that's the reason why they're bringing it, is for it to be a cash grab. With Overwatch Classic, I think Blizzard wanted to kind of fail to show, hey, this is how far we've gone. Play Overwatch 2 because we're going to continuously add butter to this game. The butter just simply evolving it over time, but not trying to change it entirely. Hopefully my arguments and also poor comparisons made sense enough to just kind of get my point across when it comes to Overwatch Classic. It wasn't supposed to be this big success. It was supposed to just be fun. Also probably test things out when it came to 6v6, even though I really don't think that was the main focus. It wasn't supposed to drive people away from the idea of 6v6 because, well, 6v6 is going to work completely different in Overwatch 2 versus in the original build of Overwatch. This was supposed to just be a fun game mode for us to try support Symmetra, Infuriating Mercy, the original version of Useless Diva, and then go back to our regularly scheduled program with Overwatch 2 with a little bit more of an appreciation, but for us to continuously go back to different eras, because that's also the goal with Overwatch Classic, to have more fun limited time modes that go back in time. And for me, I really like that, and that's why I really liked Overwatch Classic. It succeeded in that. It was fun, but I don't want to go back. I really don't. I like no hero limits. I like Mercy only having a single res. I like actually, maybe that's something that we can bring back to Overwatch 2, is the freeze for Mei. But until then, let me know what you think about Overwatch Classic and why you love it, hate it, or you don't mind it. And until the next era of Overwatch Classic, I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching more Overwatch 2 or 1 videos to come. We'll have to see. And bye.